I mean, these guys are under such immense pressure already as it is. To add the pressure of them having to be great like right away is part of the problem. We're not going to follow what everybody else is doing, and we're going to give this guy every chance possible. So I saw this interesting commentary between Chad Ochocinco and Shannon Sharp about Daniel Jones. And there's a report out right now that suggests that the Carolina Panthers are interested in bringing in Daniel Jones during the 2025 season. Now, I got to tell you, I think that's nuts. I don't think it should happen. I would rather personally go into the season next year with Andy Dalton as the quarterback if it's not going to be Bryce Young than I would Daniel Jones. But I want to listen to this commentary between these two because I think something that they're saying is really interesting. And I want to talk about how I could give the Giants some credit for what they did in this situation and also a lot of blame. But let's check it out here. So this is a clip from their show Nightcap that I want to check out where they talk about the Panthers being interested in Daniel Jones. But they don't really talk about that as much as they do the situation with Daniel Jones in New York. And I want to talk about it not necessarily because they're talking much about what we would do, because I think you and I both know this isn't going to happen. But I think it's something really interesting as to the reason why it shouldn't happen for us, and we can pull away from this and really learn and grow from this as an organization and really as a fan base in general.
In Daniel Jones.
John, please. To do what?
Ocho. He started 12 games his rookie year. He went 3-9. The next season, he went 5-9. The next season, he went 4-7. He goes 9-6-1, and he gets a contract extension. Now, you see what they did? They disregarded the previous 3 seasons, a big sample size, for the small sample size because we want to justify giving this man this money.
I see where he's going in his angle, right? But I'm going to push back a little bit. I don't think that they're trying to justify giving him money, because what this does is it starts to, when you, and further on in the conversation, he brings up the Lamar Jackson contract. So I can see where he's going with this. And I'm not saying I disagree with him, right? Because I understand that there's a different measuring stick for black quarterbacks. I'm just keep it a buck. But at the same time, I will say this. I think that they're justifying the pick, not the player. History has shown us that teams are willing to go and bend over backwards to make sure certain players, and really it just depends on the kind of team you're talking about. The Giants haven't had a history of just blowing through quarterbacks like crazy, right? Their last quarterback that they had was a long-standing quarterback who won a couple Super Bowls that they had for an extended period of time, I should say. So what I like about this is the fact that they are standing by justifying the pick. Now, that pick could have been, Daniel Jones. It could have been Dwayne Haskins. It just happened to be Daniel Jones in that draft. But the point is that, look, we picked a guy. We saw, not so good in the beginning, a little bit more improvement, and eventually, it culminated in a playoff win, in a playoff berth and a win, right, when they got Brian Daboll. And now you see that it's not going to work, clearly. But at least you exercise every single option. And yes, you paid him, but you didn't just bail on him. And we've seen this historically. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. It worked out with Terry Bradshaw. Terry Bradshaw was once benched for Joe Gilliam by Chuck Noll. It worked out for John Elway. You should know that, Shannon. He was benched once upon a time. I think this might have been before your time. But there's some guys that it have worked out for, right? I think that part of the problem that the NFL is having with these young quarterbacks, be it Anthony Richardson or, Caleb Williams or anybody, I mean, you take your pick. I've even seen people out there talking about C.J. Stroud is not any good anymore, which is crazy, right? But the issue is that, I mean, these guys are under such immense pressure already as it is. To add the pressure of them having to be great like right away is part of the problem. And I think that what the New York Giants have shown is an ability to say, you know what, we're not going to follow what everybody else is doing, and we're going to give this guy every chance possible. Now, if you want to throw, other situations into it to say like, well, it didn't happen for this guy, okay, it's a different organization, different set of circumstances. Or you could be right. There could be some, odd, interesting things, especially with what he goes on to say. Let's keep listening.
You see what they did?
Right.
You see, now we gonna disregard the 3-9. We're gonna disregard the 5-9. We're gonna disregard. Now, He had 11 touch. Okay, what do you have? He had 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He went 15-5. Let's give him a raise.
And that 15-5 look good though. That 15-5, 96 record, that look good. Okay, maybe he's going in the right direction. After the first 3 years, or the first 3, he didn't look like he should. Boom. The year where it counts, which we call it the contract year, where you want to give a quarterback some money, they saw the improvement as opposed to the small sample size that they did see. Okay, maybe
they made Lamar Jackson play under the franchise tag after he won an MVP.
Oh, yeah.
And I understand that. And that's the way they made Lamar Jackson play under a franchise tag after he won the MVP. It's a completely different organization. It's night and day. I get it from the standpoint of like the bigger picture, but it is a different organization. Not just that. The fact is, like I said, they stuck with Daniel, they stuck with Lamar, right? But we can't quantify, and here's the thing. It's not like they gave him a record-breaking contract. Was it a solid deal? Yeah. I don't have the exact numbers, but it wasn't like, number one quarterback in the league money. Not to my knowledge, right? I could be wrong. Please fact check me on that to make sure that I am wrong on that, or if I'm right or wrong on that. But it didn't hamstring them to the point where, they're in a situation this year where, it looks like they're probably going to be at the top of the draft. And if you believe in any of these quarterbacks, if you believe in Cam Ward, if you believe in Shedeur Sanders, you're right there in play for one of these guys, right? So it's not the end of the world. It's not the worst situation in the world. But how does this apply to the Panthers? I'm glad you asked. Because once upon a time, we made a trade. And that trade was for Sam Darnold. The Panthers gave the Jets a 6th-round pick in 2021, plus a 2nd and a 4th-round pick in 2022, because they felt Darnold would be an upgrade over Teddy Bridgewater. I've seen this movie before. I'm not saying that Teddy Bridgewater would have been any better the next year, but you know what he might do? He might steady the ship. And if I haven't made this clear before, let me do it now. My Bryce Young support is not because I think Bryce Young is going to be anything remotely close to a Cam Newton or anything else, right? But if Bryce Young becomes Alex Smith for us, in my opinion, it's a win. Why is it a win? Because unfortunately, your greatness in college got you drafted into a situation that wasn't the best for you. That situation, you were able to steady by finally eventually getting the right coach, could be Dave Canales, and the right set of circumstances to help you eventually flourish later in your career, maybe not even here. Guess what? We drafted Kaepernick and you get benched off of an injury, off of you coming off of a 12-4 season the year before. But what did he provide for us? He provided stability at the position. To me, that's more important than anything else right now. So why would we go repeat? Because here's newsflash. We're not just going to be able to just grab Daniel Jones unless they release him or cut him. They're probably going to go out there and say, hey, we want picks. Now, suppose that we do that this year because we do have 11 picks. Well, the last time I checked, the 2nd rounder from this draft was Jonathan Brooks, and the 4th rounder was Jatavian Sanders. Would you be comfortable giving that up potentially in the next draft to get Daniel Jones? I wouldn't even be comfortable giving that up to get a quarterback that we might believe in, right? Because he still got to come in. It still has to be developed. He still has to be developed. So why not stick with what you have and keep moving forward with it? Build your roster so that you can kind of plug a guy in, like a Tom Brady in Tampa. Not saying that that's going to be our route, but suppose it was. Suppose it is the Jared Goff model. Suppose, Bryce Young does show to get better, right? It's not so much a Bryce Young thing. It would have been this way if it was any quarterback. Yeah, I tend to like him more than I liked anybody else in that draft, and clearly I was wrong. But at this point, it's more about salvaging what we have and helping to build for the future as opposed to just continuing to keep using the same patterns over and over again, right? I saw a clip, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but there was this clip of someone talking about the breakdown of what happened with the Chicago Bears and the quarterbacks that they've had since Jay Cutler. And what they were saying was like, okay, you got Jay Cutler, you got this GM, you got this coach. Well, then the coach doesn't believe in Jay Cutler, so the coach gets fired. The GM doesn't eventually believe in Jay Cutler, so the GM gets fired. They bring in a new GM and a new coach. Well, the new GM and the new coach don't believe in Jay Cutler, so Jay Cutler gets shipped off. Then they draft Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky with Matt Nagy, has some success, right? Gets to the playoffs a couple of times, but then they stop believing in him. So then they fire the coach because, hey, I got to justify my pick. Then they fire the GM. They bring in another GM. They bring in another coach. Mitch Trubisky gets traded. Then we trade with them to give them picks to go up and get Caleb Williams, right? They draft Caleb Williams. You see the pattern I'm talking about here? If you continue to keep doing this over and over again, it's just going to be a never-ending cycle of the same thing. To the tune that if Caleb Williams doesn't work out for the Bears, they may never find a viable starting quarterback, let alone a franchise guy. I just don't want that for us. Why keep going down these patterns? If Bryce ain't the guy, Bryce ain't the guy. But give it some time. Like, there's no reason just to bail on this, like, automatically. Unless you're in a situation where, hey, your job could be gone after a year. And in that case, you know what? If I'm Dave Canales, I don't blame you. You got to do what you got to do. But this is where this report originally came from. So this is a report by, let's see, this is a story from SI.com for the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to read a little bit of this. It says, no secret that the Carolina Panthers don't have a concrete plan at quarterback for 2025. Bryce Young continues to earn starts on a week-by-week basis and is under contract next year and beyond. But that doesn't mean he's automatically the plan. Depending on how these final 7 games go, the Panthers may have a big decision to make. If they do decide to look at other options, the draft may be pathway, as well as free agency and a trade. I got to say this real quick. If the Carolina Panthers draft a quarterback high in this draft, you better hit. That's all I'm going to say. You better hit. Because there's no way if I'm high in this draft right now that I'm not addressing my defense first. My first pick is going to be, personally, my first pick would be Mason Graham. If Mason Graham's not available, my next, wish list pick for that specific position, which is nose tackle in this 3-4, if we're going to keep this defense, is Deion Walker from Kentucky. But it's one of the two. Or a pass rusher, right? Abdul Carter, James Pierce, take your pick. But I'm going 1 or 1A with those two picks. But that's just me personally. In that instance, one NFL analyst has an idea for the Panthers that's mind-bogglingly stupid. I'm glad you said it. To bring in Daniel Jones. Jordan Dajani of CBS Sports. Jones could head back home to Charlotte. He was born in Charlotte, went to high school in Charlotte before taking his talents east to play for the Duke Blue Devils. Bryce Young's future is unknown at this point, and veteran backup Andy Dalton is a free agent. Jones returning home to back up another quarterback, whether that be Young or a draft pick, makes some sense. Now, I'm glad he quantified it there. I didn't read this article before starting the video, so there you go. It's more for the idea of him being a backup, which, got to be honest with you, don't necessarily agree with. But am I giving up draft compensation for that? No. It shouldn't need to be said, but this would be a horrible idea for the Panthers with whose starting receivers Young outplayed Jones, who is a 6-year veteran in Munich. Jones currently makes $40 million, which is too much to be a league worst starter or backup, which is what the New York Giants star currently is. My pardon. The Panthers may want to move on from Young next season, but there's just no logical reason they should be looking at Daniel Jones. He will cost them probably more money than Dalton would to be a backup. And he's a downgrade from Young or anyone else they could possibly get. Could not agree more. This would be an absolute insane circumstance. We've seen this before. But personally, I am of the mindset that the Carolina Panthers have finally turned the corner and are projecting in the right direction. But either way, on the commentary I've offered today, let me know what you think. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe below. This is John from the One Carolina Show. It's Kansas City week, y'all. Keep pounding.